And yes, got it. We're live streaming on YouTube. That's great. Excellent. Maybe we're slowing down. So give it one more minute. With everybody muted, it's so quiet.
Well, I have to say that I very much appreciate these opportunities. Don't take them for granted. And I'm a docent at the Timken. We're waiting for it to reopen. And, you know, so these are really appreciated, and it keeps our minds active. Thank you.
We're really delighted to have you here. It's great to have such great partners next door at the Timken.
I have to say that it's a shock to go in and see the Timken stuff hanging there. You know, it's like meeting an old friend you don't expect, you know.
That's
really
right. And when will the Timken reopen? Is there a date? I should know this.
Yeah, we just had a conference with all the docents Monday, and the upshot is, because of usual supply delays, they are behind in the refurbishment that they want to do. However, sometime, I think roughly April, May at this point.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, anytime you'd like to come do a joint tour with us, I'm sure we'd be informal. I'm speaking out of turn, but it'd be fun to go tour through some of your works together sometime. That'd be great. We are still bringing people in, but
yeah, I agree.
This is looking good. I think we'll get going here. I'm going to do something. I'm going to spotlight me. Just this helps me actually with the editing the video. So welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Miles, and I'm a docent and chair of the guest lecture series at the San Diego Museum of Art. We're located on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation, the original people of the San Diego region, and we really are grateful for your joining us today. It's your support through participation and contributions of your time here today, all of your questions, your talent, and certainly we always support your generous donations and support for the communities that makes this event possible. The guest lecture series is hosted by our museum's docent council, and this is just one part of the docent council's mission to engage all people, cultivate their interest and understanding about the power of art in our lives. It's great to see everyone virtually. I'm looking forward to seeing you all soon, now that we're returning to duty in the galleries. Look for tours there just about every day that we're open. And I want to specifically thank my friends and colleagues who've helped make and plan this event today and the guest lecture series in general. Museum staff who broadened our outreach through electronic and social media, Dr. Jim Grebel, the museum's educator, mentor, and guide for docents at San Diego Museum of Art. And of course, our entire docent community. Many of you are here today, 80 some odd members. And special thanks to two people who've really been really moving this guest lecture series forward. Bea Barraza, the chair of our docent council this year, especially grateful for her leadership, and Mary Grillo, my partner, who honestly has done really the lion's share of this planning and execution to help make the guest lecture season possible this year. I'd like to just take a moment to tell you about our next guest lecture before we get too far along. That will be on January 21st, 2022. And it's going to feature the contemporary artist Ala Akbar. And let me show you just one image of his work that is currently on display in the Art of the Americas gallery. And it's wonderful to see an Iranian American being shown, contemporary artist being shown in the Art of Americas. It's totally appropriate and a fascinating contribution to those galleries. We'll be learning more about his work and the influences on his work on January 21st. I hope you can join us on that day. So let's see. A couple of housekeeping items. We are going to ask that you remain on mute throughout Dr. Brown's talk. And I'll just explain, on most devices, that microphone icon for muting and unmuting is located at the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen. If you don't see it right away, you might need to click or tap your screen. Sometimes our Zoom menus disappear after a while. If you tap or click your screen, they'll come back. And on some devices, like tablets, sometimes the mute microphone is along the top of above the Zoom gallery. It may not be necessarily in that bottom left corner. So explore your device accordingly. Also, for this lecture today, my colleague Mary Grillo is going to moderate a question and answer session after Dr. Brown's presentation. During the presentation, though, you may have questions you want to not lose track of. Put those in the chat. And again, the chat icon is a little bubble that looks like out of a cartoon. That if you click on that, you'll get a little window and have the opportunity to post a question to everyone. So let me tell you a little bit about today's guest speaker, Dr. Michael Brown. Michael received his doctorate degree from New York University's Institute of Fine Arts with research focusing on 18th century Spanish colonial portraiture. His academic career includes a postdoctoral fellowship at the Denver Art Museum and teaching at the University of Colorado Boulder and the University of Denver. Since joining the San Diego Museum of Art in 2014, his curatorial work here has really expanded dramatically. He's now curator of all European art. He's overseen acquisition of works by Rembrandt, Ribera, Sprenger, Goltzius, Valdez Leal, Sorolla, Wanda Mesa, Lucas Cranach. It's a who's who of European art. And he's, in addition to that, just structurally, he's helped in the renovation and reinstallation of our galleries for European art up on the second floor. He's published extensively on the arts of the Hispanic world, especially portraiture, printmaking, and the history of collecting Hispanic arts in the United States. Most recently, he developed the critically acclaimed exhibition, Art and Empire, The Golden Age of Spain, in 2019.
Oh, that was good.
Which was recognized as one of the best exhibitions of the year nationwide. So today, you will really see him in his element, so to speak. And as he talks with us about the 19th century Spanish artist, Mariano Fortuny y Marsal, master of light and line. Michael, thank you very much for being here today.
Well, it's my pleasure. And thank you, David, Mary, B, Jim, and the docent council for organizing this and inviting me to speak. It's also wonderful to see so many familiar faces on the checkerboard view here on Zoom. I'm coming to you all from my office at the museum, and it's a real privilege to be able to present on an incredibly important artist, Mariano Fortuny, or Maria Fortuny, who was born in 1838 in the city of Reus in Catalonia in Spain. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and start the PowerPoint. And I'm going to ask for a brief confirmation from David that we can all see the title slide here of my presentation.
Yep. Looks good,
Okay.
Michael.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an honor to have served as curator of European art here at the San Diego Museum of Art. Thanks to Roxana and Anita and all of my colleagues who have helped with this particular project, which is based on a very recent gift from Norman Lightman, a longtime supporter of the museum and member of our collections management committee, an incredibly knowledgeable collector in his own right, and has given us hundreds of works of art over the years, beginning in 2004. The print show of featuring 17 or 18 of Fortuny's prints, along with one by Goya and several other contemporaries of Fortuny, will open to the public on January 22nd on the second floor of the San Diego Museum of Art. And it represents a selection of Norman Lightman's gift to the museum of nearly 35 total works of art by Fortuny. We're one of the few museums in the world that has such an extensive collection, and it puts us in a category that includes the Metropolitan Museum and the British Museum, both of whom have comprehensive collections of Fortuny's works on paper. We'll see the Meadows Museum also has a number of his works later in the lecture, as well as the National Gallery of Art in Washington. Okay, there's one person that needs to mute that I could hear there. I think that's taken care of now. Excellent, thank you. So moving on to my second slide. These are just two of the exquisite etchings that will be on display in January, beginning in January, which were both made in the 1860s, and a process that's based in etching, which is an acid bath kind of process where a copper plate is covered in a neutral resin that can be etched, that can be, you can use a drawing implement or dry point tool to create lines through the neutral covering of the copper, and the acid will then eat only the copper. It was a process that was most famously mastered by Rembrandt, and continued as a highly meticulous and time-consuming type of medium, but it involves the artist's sort of constant tinkering with the actual materials and the method and the process. And so when you look over the history of etching, there are a few artists that really excel in this demanding medium, from Rembrandt to Goya to Castiglione, and then also to Fortuny and later Picasso. This is another example of his work in which he experiments with different types of paper, in this case, Japan paper. And we have two impressions of this beautiful nocturnal image of the cathedral, interior of the cathedral in Madrid. One's on laid paper, which is traditional European type paper, and the other is on the more delicate, bluer Japan. The Fortuny gift from Norman Lightman really expands our museum's holdings of Spanish art. We have been, since day one, devoted to the collection and presentation of Spanish art, Spanish painting, Spanish sculpture, including the first work of art that the museum acquired in 1926, which is Sorolla's Maria at La Granja on the left. And then much more recently, we were able to make an acquisition of a work from 1908, the year following the Maria at La Granja. Maria is the artist's daughter, and they were in La Granja to help her recover from tuberculosis. And these two works, which now grace the the second floor of the San Diego Museum of Art, were originally part of an exhibition, a blockbuster, really one of the first great American blockbuster shows, which was a retrospective of Sorolla's painting at the Hispanic Society of America. And we actually, with the help of one of the curators of the Hispanic Society, uncovered a photograph showing these two works on display in 1909 together. And now they're back reunited here in San Diego. We also just this year made our most recent acquisition of a Spanish painting, the Susanna and the Elders by Ribera. This is really one of the great strengths of the museum's collection, which is the 17th century in Spain. And since joining the museum, we've been able to acquire 2 paintings by Ribera that join our 4 Zurbarons, and of course the star of the collection is the Sanchez Cotan, which should need no introduction. And to get back to Norman Lightman, one of the recent gifts that he very graciously made to the museum is this very rare engraving in 3 plates of the wedding of Cupid and Psyche. And this was the centerpiece of the exhibition, the first that I organized here at the museum. And during the run of the exhibition, and you can see the background of my office, the beautiful graphic design work for Divine Desire, which featured almost 80 engravings and other works on paper from Goltzius and his workshop. For the most part, there were some Dürer prints as well, all focusing on mythology. And this is just an amazing example of Norman's generosity to the museum in this beautiful 3-plate engraving. And coming to Fortuny and his early life. As I mentioned, he was born in Reus in 1838. Reus itself is known as one of the most important artistic centers of the Islamic Iberian period, and very well known for its ceramics. And this is a part of Spain where ceramics and woodworking and leather thrived throughout and continue to do so. After studying, Fortuny had the opportunity. His artistic star was on the rise, and he was a young artist when he was commissioned by the state legislature to paint a recent victory battle, the Battle of Tetuan, which was part of the Hispano-Moroccan War, which lasted under a year, but it was part of Spain's campaign to protect its colonial territories in North Africa on the southern side of the Strait of Gibraltar. And this necessitated Fortuny's travels to Morocco, and he traveled to Morocco for the first time in 1860. He made hundreds of sketches of the territory. Of course, the battle was long over, so a lot of the historical details are from oral history and his imagination. But as you can see here, the resulting painting, which is now at the National Museum in Barcelona, is nearly 10 meters across. So this is an absolutely enormous history painting. And it really, it was a major undertaking, but it also allowed for Fortuny to gain a fair bit of international prestige as an acclaimed history painter. And first and foremost, that's really what he was. Although, as we'll see over the course of the lecture, he was a very well-rounded artist, and towards the end of his life became even more experimental in his approach. But his roots were in the grand historical painting tradition. And here you can see the commission from the royal family, and now that this is along with the rest of the royal collection is at the Museo del Prado in Madrid. But this 1865 painting of Queen Maria Cristina and her daughter Isabel II, reviewing the artillery batteries defending Madrid in 1837. So a painting which looked back 30 years to a previous generation of military history in Spain. But at this point, 1865, Fortuny has reached the highest echelons of artistic success in Spain, winning the commission of the royal family, which Goya had done in the generation before him. And so Fortuny understood his place in the long history of Spanish court painters and the importance of people like Velázquez and Titian and Rubens before him. And speaking of Rubens, Fortuny takes an approach in the portrait over the mantelpiece very similar to Rubens in dressing his patron, his most important American patron, William Hood Stewart, in the portrait above the fireplace here, looking very Rubenesque in his breastplate and rough collar, this lace collar that was worn in the 17th century. And this painting, which is at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, was started right around the same time as Fortuny was working on the Battle of Tetuan. And so by this point, he had made inroads into American collectors' circles. And we think of artists like Bouguereau, who we've shown recently at the museum, and Sorolla a little bit later, and their shared followings among American collectors who were interested in the Spanish world, especially whether it be historic or contemporary. And in Fortuny, someone like William Hood Stewart found an ideal mix of the historic and the contemporary. And you'll see that many of Fortuny's paintings feature a nostalgic look back to the 18th century in their dress, in their decor. And this painting also serves as a little preview for all of us into the created world of Fortuny and his studio, because many of the props that are used in his paintings, this one, the print collector or antiquaries, these were all parts of his personal collection. And so in that sense, he fits into, we'll get into this a little bit later, he fits into the tradition, the great tradition of the artist as collector. William Hood Stewart commissioned this work, and Fortuny actually went back later on and painted in the portrait above the fireplace as an acknowledgement to his patron that wasn't at the patron's request. Around this time, when Fortuny had the opportunity to spend time in Madrid, he made extensive use of his time in the Prado galleries, studying the works of Velázquez, as you can see in these two watercolor studies. One on the right featuring the self-portrait of Velázquez himself from Las Lanzas, one of the largest battle paintings in the Prado, and one in which Fortuny would have measured himself as a painter of historic battle scenes as well. Also looming large in Fortuny's artistic imagination is the work of Goya, and he made numerous studies of his works, including some of his smaller pieces, which he could see in the Prado's print room. And not to get ahead of myself here, but Fortuny's access to the Prado's collections only became more intimate once he had befriended Ricardo de Madrazo, another artist, whose father happened to be the director of the Prado. And Ricardo's sister, Cecilia, became Fortuny's wife. They met in Madrid and fell in love and were actually married in Madrid in 1867. So the Madrazo and Fortuny families at that point became very much intertwined, and her brothers and Fortuny were very good friends, lifelong. And in fact, Cecilia and Fortuny's son, whose name was also Mariano, was an artist himself, working out of Venice eventually, and became a very important fashion designer, haute couture fashion designer, whose work is now in many of the most important collections throughout the world, including the Metropolitan Museum's Fashion Institute. And here is Cecilia on the right, and on the left, a late watercolor of Cecilia in Portici, one of the vacation residences that the Fortuny and Madrazo families had in Italy. But this painting on the right is actually by Cecilia's father, Federico de Madrazo. This was back in the day when the Prado Museum was directed by leading artists of the day, and in fact, little known, but Picasso actually served as the director of the Prado as well for a couple of years. Now, this painting is called The Spanish Wedding, and Fortuny painted this not long after his marriage to Cecilia, which was very happy, and it's an example of kind of his tongue-in-cheek and satirical look at Spanish traditions, the fancy dress of the 18th century, and I think he took delight in painting scenes like this, especially after his own wedding. So I include that here. It's one of his most famous paintings, but in the course of his life, it fits beautifully in with his personal story. Now, while he was traveling in Morocco, originally for the Battle of Tétouan studies, he traveled there in 1860 and 1862, and finally in 1871. And you can see that in his watercolors and in his oil paintings, his main interest is in the culture, the people, the architecture and art of Morocco and North Africa. And he begins in the 1860s when he returns to his studio primarily in Rome to make etchings of the Moroccan subjects that he studied while he was there. He also began making etchings of the people and architecture in southern Spain. He traveled to Granada and Seville as well from his home base in Rome. And the etching on the left of seated figures in front of an arched doorway, there are actually there are at least 4 figures that are depicted. One is sitting on the right, and you can see that the artist, let me see if I can use my pointer here and highlight right around here. I think I get rid of that. This ghost image of an arm here, the arm of the figure was outstretched at one point, and he makes a correction. And this is such a hallmark of great etchers making changes to their work constantly. And so in a previous state, the arm is intact, and it reminds me very much of the way that Rembrandt worked, and the approach to light and dark, the approach to cross hatching and line is very much in keeping with the type of artistic practice that Rembrandt excelled at. And moving forward, we can see Fortuny's probably his greatest print, and all 3 of these prints that I've just shown are featured in the exhibition, which will open in January. And this one is called the Anchorite. We know it in several different states, which really just means that he did print runs, sometimes of only 1 or 2 or 3, and then would make changes to the plate and do another print run after that. That would be the second state. And then this is the 4th state of the etching, in which he uses, just as Goya had done, the additional processes of aquatint and burnishing, which create the subtle changes in tone throughout the printed image. And it's really a multifaceted approach to printmaking that offered a wide range of tones and subtleties to the work of art. And when you look at different states next to each other, as we'll do in a minute, you can see how these changes manifest themselves in the final outcome. But here, the Anchorite, which is a religious hermit, you can see is in this really inhospitable landscape, living in a cave with a simple jug of water, and even the tree is struggling to survive in this atmosphere. And this really was a landmark in Fortuny's printmaking career. And here we can, the most immediate comparison would be to Rembrandt's landscapes, especially the 3 trees, his most famous and largest landscape, in which he uses etching, engraving with burin, the engraver's tool, and dry point, which is a more detailed needle-like instrument that he could get extensive fine detail out of. And like Rembrandt, or like Fortuny, I should say, Rembrandt also printed this in several different states, and experimenting with different papers, and for the changes that the paper would offer in the achievement of light and dark. This is an interesting image, which we're looking at the impression at the Metropolitan Museum here, but this will be in the show as well. This is known as the Master of Ceremonies, and this figure emerges out of the dark, kind of moving towards the viewer. This was done about 1865, and in looking at this very closely, you could see just to the left of the figure's head is kind of a ghost image. And when we turn the sheet horizontally, you can see that the artist has burnished out what looks like an architectural detail, a staircase perhaps, and an architectural plinth that is just to the right center of the image here. And again, like Rembrandt, he reuses his plate here, and doesn't really mind letting the original image on the matrix, on the copper plate, show through. And like Rembrandt, he delights in these accidental results from the acid bath process, and Rembrandt is famous for these kind of intentional mistakes. Foul biting is one. It's where you over acid the process, and sometimes unexpected results come through that add to the depth of the image, and I think that looking at Fortuny rewards close looking, and he doesn't mind showing you the process of the etching, experimental etching kind of method. And here he also excels at nocturnal scenes, which he has Goya in mind when he's doing things like the serenade on the right, a kind of traveling band, singer, performer, street performers, buskers, basically, in Madrid under candlelight. And you look at Goya's nocturnal works, this one called Mala Noche, a bad night. Fortuny is nowhere near as pessimistic or dark as Goya is from an iconography perspective, but from a technical perspective, he's really looking at the capriccios and other Goya prints for the richness of the design, the richness of that black sky in the background. This is just a masterpiece of the medium. Likewise, many of his figures, this is also in the show on the left, and Goya's muchachos on the right, an interest in the historical dress and almost a melancholy, nostalgic look back in some of his compositions. Now, we mentioned William Hood Stewart earlier, and he actually came to the studio, Fortuny's studio in Rome in 1869, while this fairly large painting was underway, and he negotiates a reserve with the artist himself to buy the painting upon its completion. And Fortuny continued working on this for several years, refining it, and until eventually sending it to Stuart. And you can see it's a satiric view of palace interior. And the title of the work is Choice of a Model, in which these art critics or connoisseurs or self-styled connoisseurs are looking at female model for a nude painting. And of course, they're very studious in the way that they're approaching this activity. And Fortuny is really poking fun at the supposed art connoisseurs of previous generations and their social pretensions. And but it's a masterpiece of composition in which Fortuny also has the opportunity to pay homage to some of the artistic figures that informed his imagination. There was a print that was made after this painting, which is in the show, and it's a beautiful work on silk that doesn't reproduce very well. But in person, I encourage everyone to look very closely at this when you come to see the exhibition, because it's a beautiful print and a very faithful reproduction of Fortuny's most famous painting. And if we look in the background of the painting, we can see the other works of art that Fortuny has chosen to decorate the scene. Most notably, up here in the corner, a partial view of Velázquez's Mercure and Argus in the Prado. And this painting, which we'll zoom in on even further, of an equestrian portrait of Philip IV, which is now in the Uffizi, and is a copy by Rubens in his studio after a lost painting, now lost painting by Diego Velázquez. You can see up in the corner in the on the left, he's also put in an El Greco portrait, which still survives, and Veronese below it. Now, Fortuny and his legacy. One of his prime pupils was an Italian artist named Attilio Simonetti, and we happen to have a painting by Simonetti in the San Diego Museum of Art, and so that will feature in the show. And here are two compositions: the left by Simonetti, and the right, the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, of Fortuny's rare vase, in which you can see that same pose is borrowed from the central figure of the connoisseur in Choice of a Model, with the maul stick kind of up to the chin as a sign of well-educated connoisseurship. Now, Fortuny also loomed large in the artistic imagination of later artists, most notably Sargent, who also traveled to North Africa in the late 1870s, 1880s. You can see the similarities artistically between these two images. Fortuny's on the left and Sargent's on the right. And then to come back to the anchorite, the image of the hermit here, now we're looking at it in two different states, where the artist has dramatically filled in the composition in the later state, which we'll see in the show, and his earliest sort of experimentation on the left, which is in the second state in the Prado. Well, in 1869, 1870, when these prints were being produced, they were being sold through the dealer Goupil in Paris. And Vincent van Gogh, along with his brother Theo, worked for Goupil, and there's a rather ecstatic letter that Vincent writes to his brother Theo, describing the experience of looking at the Anchorite and two other prints by Fortuny, who he would later meet when they were both in London. This is before Van Gogh had really begun in earnest his artistic career. He was making a living as working for this dealer. But he writes to Theo saying that that these prints are as close to the most beautiful truth that he could imagine, and he really was very affected by the experience of seeing and handling works by Fortuny. And I think they developed quite a friendship in a very brief amount of time when they were both in London. And in his later works of art, towards the end of his life, and he died in 1874. He's a very, very young man. Fortuny began to experiment more with other cultures, not just the Islamic cultures that had been an integral part of his surroundings in his hometown of Reus, but also with Japanese culture and artistic traditions. As you can see here, he paints his two children, he and Cecilia's two children, in the Japanese room at their summer residence in Portici in Italy. And this painting was done with the intent to send it to Federico de Madrazo, the director of the Prado, who was the children's grandfather. And if we look at Van Gogh and his interest in Japanese visual influences and traditions, we can see an immediate affinity between Van Gogh and Fortuny. Fortuny was really, ahead of his time as far as the birth of modernism was concerned. And again, we see the prints that really struck Van Gogh. And finally, this is the last section of the talk. One aspect of Fortuny's life, his prolific artistic career, was paralleled by his activities as a collector. And his great friend Attilio Simonetti came from a family of art dealers, and he would actually continue the family business, which in some iteration still exists to this day. But he and Fortuny, Simonetti and Fortuny, would travel around and they were inveterate collectors. They would buy up anything that interested them, and were lucky enough to have quite a visual record of Fortuny's extensive studio in Rome, in which many of the objects that he collected are seen. And we can see a lot of the ceramics from the Reus and Manises workshops from the Islamic period in Spain that line his studio, as well as other objects like carpets and Italian furniture. And there's a set of Japanese armor up at the very top there. This is a painting done by Ricardo de Madrazo, Cecilia's brother, who was Mariano's great friend. We're also lucky that many of these objects have survived in different museums around the world, and there's also early photography of his studio. And here's one of the most beautiful objects from his collection. which is a coffer from the 13th century, made in Granada of ivory, gold, and wood. This was made in one of the decorative arts workshops in Granada. And eventually it was a gift from Cecilia to Simonetti, who then gave or sold it to the museum in Turin. And you can see the box is right on the mantle, the lower part of the mantelpiece inside the cabinet here above the three large plates on the left. Then if we zoom in to the painting by Madrasso, we can see a number of other objects, including the salt vase, which was made also in Granada in the 14th century. And that has survived and found its way into the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. And it was made also in Granada around 1350. And in the painting, you can see, as it's displayed in the Hermitage to this day, the tripod or the feet were designed and created by Fortuny himself for this work of art. And in the middle of the painting, you can also see this bronze lion fountainhead made in the somewhere between 1100 and 1300 in Palencia, and which is in Spain, and it's currently in the Louvre. And interestingly, it was part of the selection of highlights to show at the inauguration of the Louvre Abu Dhabi in 2018. And the photograph that I'm showing you comes from the recent exhibition. It's a remarkable work of art, and also shows Fortuny's ongoing interest in Islamic cultures, which were very much a part of his cultural background growing up in Reus. And finally, a very interesting object, which is called an adarga presidial, and this is an American object. This was made in Mexico, and it's a leather shield, which had its stylistic origins in Islamic types, and several of these still exist to this day. This one happens to be at the Army Museum in Toledo, in Spain. And finally, we'll look at a couple of Fortuny's last works of art from the year he died, 1874. And what must have been among the happiest times of his life was a vacation that he and his family took, extended family, both the Fortuny and Madrasso and a couple of other artists, all traveled to Portici, just south of Naples, in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, and he made several important paintings during this stay, including two friends, possibly his wife and her friend Emma, sitting on the beach in Portici. This canvas, fairly large canvas, you can see he's experimenting with a vibrant palette. In 1874, this is the very beginnings of the Impressionist movement, and already Fortuny is experimenting with a parallel movement of his own, which came out of Spanish and Italian precursors to French Impressionism. And this work was in the 2017 retrospective at the Prado Museum of Fortuny's work, which was a seminal event because it really revived his reputation, his artistic importance among broad audiences in 2017. And this painting had been in a private collection until 2018, when the Meadows Museum at SMU in Dallas was able to make this phenomenal acquisition. Marc Roglan, the museum's director at the time, he passed away just this year, far too young, age 50. This is one of the really important seminal acquisitions that he was able to make for the Meadows Museum. And it's an incredible work of art. And lastly, also during 1874, he painted these two very intimate watercolor portraits, the one of Cecilia, his wife, on the right, and Emma Zaragoza, who was the wife of a fellow artist who was also staying at the house. These are both taken in the patio courtyard of the house in Portici, and you can see actually the same plant, potted plant, is featured in both. But most remarkably, in the work on the left of Emma Zaragoza, you can see a Japanese folding screen and a fan that she's holding, and one gets a glimpse into what might have been for this really groundbreaking artist. The interest in Japanese culture and in Islamic culture was not one of exoticism for Fortuny. He was deeply interested in the history of these other cultures, and as a native of Reus, his interest in the Islamic world was a natural outgrowth, and so made him very different than what came to be known as the Orientalist painters in France. And we get a glimpse of where he was going as an artist in these two intimate works, because their compositions are beautiful, but they're also experimental in their palette, their handling of paint, in the abstraction of the backgrounds of both works, and the use of some of his own collection in the compositions. So, what happened to Fortuny? Well, at some point during the stay in Portici, which ended at the very end of October, when he and his family returned to Rome, and it was back in Rome immediately after returning from Portici that he developed symptoms of malaria and died. And so the last works of art that he did are quite poignant, knowing the history, but it also gives us a glimpse into what might have been, and certainly solidifies the importance of this great artist for the development throughout Europe in the 19th century of not just Impressionism, but modernism itself. And I think that's where I'm going to end it and open the floor to questions. Hopefully I can answer questions, and I'm going to turn it over to David now and stop sharing my screen.
Great, thank you so much. Mary, we'll pass the baton. And you are muted.
Always good for a moderator. So Michael, that was incredible. The amazing detail, not only in this presentation, but in the artwork that you shared with us, just shows, frankly, the depth of the knowledge behind this collection. So I was wondering, with all of this, you mentioned William Hood Stewart as being his patron, but who else were his admirers, and who else supported his art? Obviously Van Gogh was an admirer, but so could you share that with us?
Sure. Another important American patron was Junius Morgan, who was JP's father and one of the initial benefactors of the Metropolitan Museum. He bought his works primarily through Goupil in Paris. I mentioned his Spanish patrons, including the state legislature in Barcelona being that first great step up for his artistic career. But he also had admirers in Italy and eventually throughout Europe. He visited Paris and London as well, and I think that like Rembrandt, he also, or Goya for that matter, he used his prints as a kind of way to internationalize his artistic career. So these were things that were highly portable, that could be sent across the Atlantic very, very easily. He set the stage for Sorolla, really, because by the time Sorolla was making inroads with an American audience, it had become clear that there was a nascent interest in Spanish art in American collecting circles. So Archer Huntington, when he founded the Hispanic Society, was also promoting artists like Fortuny, then Sorolla, and so there's a huge amount of material at the Hispanic Society in New York as well.
And you mentioned Goya and Velasquez, but what other artists did Fortuny admire?
Well, I think as a collector, he certainly had Rubens in mind. Rubens was one of the most important collectors of the 17th century, and as we saw, Fortuny made sort of tips of the cap to Rubens in his paintings. He also looked to Van Dyck and did watercolor studies of Van Dyck's paintings that were also at the Prado. But I think, from a artistic personality point of view, Rubens would have been one of the greats to him. He also would have been aware of the earlier printmakers like Dürer in Northern Europe, because those prints were readily accessible throughout Italy, especially during Fortuny's lifetime.
Ray, you have your hand up.
So you mentioned dry point in connection with some of his etchings.
Yes.
Would that have been an embellishing after it was printed? And if so, would that be even more valuable?
For the most part, what I've seen is that he would have, yes, he used the dry point as to embellish the detail of the prints, but of the things that I've seen, they're in the plate already in more advanced states.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I see your hand. Yes.
Are you referring to Didi Hollowell?
I am. I'm sorry. I couldn't
Sorry, no,
under.
I can't, I should have, I am not a connoisseur of fashion, but what strikes me in the earlier part of your talk, looking at the pictures, I mean, obviously you were saying satire and satirist, intent with some of the clothing in copies of earlier periods and whatnot, whether serious or not. But, we see so much of the Civil War period here in the States with the balloon dresses and all that. And then, of course, the later stuff from the Impressionists, the fashions are very, available to us. But the parts that are, I guess, in the 50s, a phase there where it looks like, is he going backwards or forwards? Is he deliberately retrojecting the fashions? What's happening there?
Yeah, he's definitely intentionally creating a previous time period, specifically the 18th century, and the dress is an indicator of that. And so essentially, he's looking back to a Spain that was very much, while it was part of the Enlightenment, was also still very much an absolute monarchy, and so there's a satirical aspect to portraying those times, and you notice that when he's actually painting his family, his son barely has anything on anyway. It's such a great toddler, kind of thing to just disrobe, but all of his family, they're always wearing contemporary clothing. And that young son, Mariano, who I mentioned, was becomes very much interested in fashion professionally. And so I think that he would have looked at his father's artwork and his collection and so forth for inspiration. And he also, the son, Mariano, the son, looked back even further in creating probably his most famous dress type, which was the peplos, which follows on ancient Greek types of dress, types of attire. So fashion's just an important part of it, and he uses it in different ways. Fortuny the painter.
It just mentally, it's sort of, I'm trying to place it by the clothes, and you can't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you got to know what the year of the composition is. So thank you very much.
Hilda, you had your hand up.
Yes, Dr. Brown, it was a fantastic lecture, really interesting. I was wondering if you could, actually I have two questions. Will there be a catalog of this exhibition or some kind of a printed help, because it is such an unknown artist? And my second question is, can you tell us a little bit more, what access did he have to Rembrandt's etchings? Was Rembrandt well known in Spain, and were these etchings readily available? Were they popular? Were other people using them, or is this something very unusual that he used Rembrandt? Thank you.
He would have had easy access to Rembrandt's work. Yes, Rembrandt was well known, especially in Italy. He was collected by other artists. So his prints were in circulation and in collections that Sorolla had access to. There are a number of private collections in Rome and Venice that probably would have had extensive Rembrandt collections that he would have had access to.
Does anyone else have a question?
No, I do. I might have zoned out at some point. Why did he end up in Rome?
Well, that's a good question. I think like many artists, including Velázquez and Rubens, Rome was a kind of ideal breeding ground for the knowledge of art history, had offered him the opportunity to study, like he had at the Prado, these great collections in Rome. And he also made friends there. There was a group of Spanish artists that were all working in Italy, and a lot of them interacted with a group of contemporary Italian artists who are collectively known as the Macchiaioli, the sort of precursors to the Impressionist movement. And while they have been studied as a group and as individual artists, they're not well understood in the development of 19th century painting, or at least maybe misunderstood. But in Fortuny's day, he would have seen an artistic opportunity to learn there, and also to grow his artistic career. He just preferred it to Paris. He did go to Paris, and his principal dealer was in Paris, but he just preferred living in Italy.
What struck me is the evolution of his painting, because the earlier works are so dark, and his later works are so filled with light. And was that the impact of the Macchiaioli, or? I mean, they're stunning. I love the Japanese room and the the last one that you showed.
The Japanese room is just a really remarkable work of art. And, not to be sentimental about it, but these late works really do show Fortuny's experimentation, innovation with color, with, the application of paint, whether it's oil or watercolor. This is an artist who was the most acclaimed Spanish artist of the 19th century, before we come to Sorolla, before we come to Picasso. And he occupies an important place in the development of someone like Picasso. And the approach, that kind of dazzling palette that he employs in his late works, that was the direction that he was heading. And he kind of leaves the darker compositions of the 1860s behind to embrace these beautiful images of his family. And he does seascapes and landscapes, which I really only showed the one beach scene, but these things all set the stage for Sorolla's magnificent seascapes, often populated with members of his family.
Wow. Does anyone else have a question?
More.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
So sorry. I just wanted to make a historical note that the palude, the swamps around Rome, were really one of the main reasons why Rome stayed so little throughout the late medieval and into the second millennia, because it was so unhealthy. It was very well known. Also in the rice fields in northern Italy, there's paintings and stuff that people have done, but it was Mussolini, unfortunately, who gets the credit for draining these swamps, I believe, as late as the 1920s or 30s. So Rome is just noted for its malarial diseases. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's funny, you find yourself when you're in the course of researching a certain topic. I was looking at malaria rates in Italy, in Rome, in southern Italy, in Morocco, where it was just too dry to really have much malaria at all. But in Italy and in the south of Spain, malaria wasn't eradicated until the 1950s. It was still prevalent in Italy during Fortuny's lifetime, and so we presume that knowing how malaria works, he would have contracted it in Portici.
Margot?
Are the paintings going to be in the exhibit too, or just the prints? And I have the same question: is there going to be a catalog?
There's no catalog, unfortunately. It doesn't mean that we're not going to do a publication eventually, but this is really just the exhibition, which is accompanied by text in the gallery and some online text as well, but nothing. There's no printed book that's going to be produced. There are several excellent publications that hopefully will be available in our museum store. And as I mentioned, the late director of the Meadows Museum, Mark Roglan, he was the great scholar on Fortuny and had a huge impact on reviving his name. So hopefully we'll have the Prado catalog or some of the other Fortuny works in English that he produced.
And are the paintings going to be there, or just
the painting? No, the paintings are not traveling for the show. This is based really solely on the holdings of the museum.
Anyone else have a question? And speak up if I don't see you. Hello? Is someone speaking? Okay. All right. Well, I can't thank you enough. I'm going to turn this back over to David.
Great. Well,
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Michael. What a great lecture, and can't wait to see the exhibition.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll say thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's been a great talk. We look forward to seeing you in the galleries. Come on down. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's see. There we go. Well, great.
Well, that was excellent. Thanks, everybody. We had.
Is Michael gone?
Yep, he's gone.
Oh, well.
Didn't ask him to stay around.
I'm sure
At
he's.
high point, we had 50 people, and if there were 56 signed up, that's probably the best portion of people we've ever had. So very good. Good work.
Great. Thank you.
Hey.
Let's get together soon and talk about next season, see if we can't actually get a summary of who's coming up so we can begin publishing the whole rest of the season.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Also, while you're all on here, could we just go over what the agenda is for the executive committee meeting?
Let's see.
There were two.
Shifting gears, there was something that came up talking about how to create a new docent duty schedule, I think was one of them.
One of them, yeah. Also, we should do the mission statement in the, because we still have to get that done. And there was one other thing, right?
Yes, and that was the issue of the refresh. You mentioned this to me because I missed the last meeting, but you were talking about refreshing the new docents or anyone else who wants to.
Right.
And I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I think I understand but where a chance where we would be in the galleries doing this. What is your thought?
Well, we can talk about that at the executive committee. I think we don't have any well-developed thoughts.
Okay, all righty.
But this might be a meeting that we want to have on the first Friday.
Right. We said we were, so.
Yes,
I
on the
think it's
3rd.
30 minutes.
Right.
Exactly. And I'll be, before that, I will have met with the two chairs of the ad hoc committees to get them going on goals and objectives so that we can give Mary, policies and procedures. Of course, Jim will review those with us. You're coming to the one meeting. And I'm also meeting with Taffy and Kathy. I would invite you all, but we're meeting at the yacht club. Kathy, let's have lunch. So, and she has quite an agenda. She's really taken this bit by the teeth. Is that expression? Yeah. And she has a whole agenda for Kathy, and she's come up with, I think, what is a wonderful program. And shall I invite her to the exec, or should I just ask her?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll just ask her to give me her thoughts of inviting all the trustees and all the board, inviting them personally to invite their families that are here for the holidays to go on a private tour with a docent.
Good.
So, of course she has. I mean, that's Kathy. And I think it's that's just one of the many ideas that she has about this. And so we should be, and this weekend I'll work on helping, designing sort of a outline of how to write goals and objectives for Kathy. She knows how to do this. She was an elementary school teacher, but you forget,
Yeah.
And it seems daunting. It isn't daunting. As we know from policies and procedures, Mary, and each and every one of you knows it's.
You're talking about Kathy Jones.
Oh yes, excuse me, Kathy
Yeah.
Jones, and then Kathy.
And for that, just making it simple.
Simple, but descriptive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the one other thing Marina and I are exchanging emails about doing an art connection, I think January 7th. It would be the first Friday in January, based on the symposium discussion about the future of docenting that Elaine sent us. Jim, did you get the email? Which I watched this morning. That's and it springboards into a great discussion. And so we thought that might be a good way to launch the year. But
yeah,
there's nothing radical in it. I mean, it's kind of what we've been talking about, but I think it would be good for folks to hear it from that panel. And then we could have a discussion, a DEI discussion around it. So. Okay.
A DEI discussion. So is that something that I will contact Gina this afternoon or this morning? Is that something we should add as a recommendation for the executive committee, that they watch it? I have not watched it yet.
I would say they can wait until we do the discussion.
Okay.
I don't see, it's not like you need to see it ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So does that sound okay to everybody though?
Sounds okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And now I just have one question because I'm so far behind. What's happening on the 10th of December?
Board meeting.
Board meeting.
We're meeting. Okay. And then the holiday party will be a New Year's Eve, a New Year's party, or?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm so relieved. I was just getting mixed messages. So
maybe you've heard this already, but I took away from the board meeting this month that, the most recent classes need to step up, it's reasonable to ask them to do hospitality. Yeah. And it's not that hard. It will only last a short period till you get a new class graduated, and then you move on. But it's really helpful.
And Jim and Gina sent a letter out that Jim reviewed, and she's going to send that letter out. But I'll get in touch with Gina.
And we had suggested you both sign it, you and Jim. So from the two of you.
Yeah, I mean, it has both our names. I didn't actually do a signature.
Yeah. I think it's a.
You know, yeah.
I don't know if she sent it yet. Has she?
No, I haven't seen it, but I only have, I think, like 300 emails that
I think it was waiting for your approval because I made a few tweaks and then sent it
oh, good.
back. So we shouldn't
And
waste time. And the other thing about the 10th, I think there's an important part of the election process that happens.
Yes, nominations, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're already late. Don't we have to have 30 days?
Oh,
Yeah, although we were talking about changing that, but we won't have the board stuff approved by then. 30 days until the next meeting, you mean?
No, I thought we had to have a 30-day notice that we were doing it. And don't we, is there a nominating, don't you have to have a nominating committee appointed?
Right.
A chair?
You do.
Before the December 10th meeting, you have to have a chair and the appointee by the chair of the docents, that's B. And then the third one is elected at the meeting by nomination from the full. But all that stuff should have gone out by now, so.
Well, no one noticed how haphazard it was last time.
Right. Well, we'll plead COVID.
It was pretty.
COVID obstruction, but we need to get on it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All
So
right.
You have to have a chair.
okay.
It can't be anybody who's running for the board, so that rules out a whole lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
So who would you suggest from the, because I don't have a roster in front of me, I apologize, but does anyone?
Doug McMenamy here.
Well, my point of view is that it should be someone who's really experienced. I don't think you want a chair of the nominating committee as a really green person who doesn't know the ins and outs. That's just my experience.
It's not rocket science, let me tell you. But we could, no, you're right. So,
well, and sort of, I don't know. I hate to throw out names.
Jim, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying qualifications more than names. I think in our past, it's always been good to have one category of people has been past officers or past chairs who are no longer going to be running.
Yeah.
Because they know the ins and outs of how these jobs work and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So one category.
it could like Linda Davis.
Yeah, that's a good one. Linda Di Benedetto would be good.
Linda Di Benedetto.
She'd be great. Yeah.
Willing. It's not like you said, Mary. It's not a hard job. It's just.
It took me a week. It took me a week to do it. I mean, it was nothing.
So those are the two Lindas are good.
Especially because we have an incumbent board. I mean, I don't think it'll be that complicated.
Yeah. So, and then invite someone new who will then take on, which might be Doug. Let's get a.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as it's not the chair, you can help.
So then it's the current chair be a nominating committee chair.
He's not on it.
He's not on it.
No.
Okay.
But she appoints the two people.
She appoints.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
She appoints two and we nominate one. Got it. Okay.
Right. Right. But I don't know how we do the nomination process this time because we're behind schedule. Right. So the way Kathy Jones did it, which violated everything in the bylaws. So I was the chair. She appointed Carolyn Dahl. We were supposed to consult and pick someone between the two of us. Carolyn picked the person and told me who it's going to be. So, that's how it was. But we could probably at least get those two to work together to pick the right pick the third person.
Yeah.
Okay, you mean Linda Davis and Linda D.
Well,
they could do it too. I mean, or
pick one of those as your chair. Let me just read this.
Okay.
Before the scheduled election of the docent council Board Executive Committee, the docent chair appoints 2 docents to serve on the nominating committee. 1 member chosen at large to serve as a chair, and 1 member from the board. So you can pick one who's a current board member. And no, not could, you should, you must have one who is a current board member. Then at the docent council meeting, at a docent council meeting, and we're saying that's the December 10th meeting, the 3rd member of the nominating committee shall be elected from the floor. See, that should have been done already, but we're kind of pressed for time.
But that's not a council member meeting, is it? December 10th? I thought it was a board meeting.
It's a, yeah.
Oh, I have it as a council meeting on the original list that Gina sent around. It's listed as a docent council meeting.
Didn't we just
Oh.
have one?
It just, that's what time does to you, Mary. Yeah.
I thought we just had one.
So we have, oh,
I'm just looking at the list that we have.
Oh, perfect. So we could do the,
Docent council, December 10th.
okay, so we could do the board meeting the hour before and then do the council meeting at 11?
Sure.
Does that work?
Since it's not a holiday party, it should be a short council. There's not a lot
yeah.
of other
right.
than doing this nomination thing. So then it says, at the December docent council meeting, the nominating committee presents a slate of candidates. So we already have a problem because we haven't had the election of the 3rd member of the committee. If we can't do it at the same meeting, then we're going to present a slate. You know what I mean? So we either need to slip in, and you can't do a special meeting without 30 days notice.
Oh, dear.
What if we slide everything
Look,
back a
if
month?
we have the 2, we could just do a nomination and election. It won't be exactly right, but it'll get us there, and then we can redo the bylaws. Because otherwise we'd have to wait till
January.
January.
Right.
By
And
the
then-
way, I don't know if Mary shared this, but when we met and talked about revising the policies and procedures, we're proposing the elections be put later in the year. We don't see why the election should be.
This has always been a mystery to me.
Why do you need
Yeah.
6 months to prepare to take over? It's like craziness. I don't remember, Mary, what was it? We pushed it to February, March or something?
yeah, I think March. Yeah.
So if we had a council meeting in December, we could nominate the 3rd member of the nominating committee and then elect them into that nominating committee, appoint them, and then January have them put out nominations. And then February, we do an election. We just slide everything by a month.
Yeah,
Right.
just,
That's fine with me. We've done it before. As long as the group agrees to it, it's fine.
yeah, yeah.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
The trick is to avoid any complaint from anyone who has a axe to grind, is always give 30 days notice that you're going to do these special things at a meeting. So if you announce in an email to everyone that you're postponing the election and the nominations and all that stuff, then there shouldn't be any problem. So yeah, so December 10th, definitely board, then council. Take your 3rd nominating committee member at that meeting.
And it probably will be a white ballot, right?
Yeah, I don't know why not.
Yeah.
The thing is, depending on how cynical and Machiavellian you want to be, what has happened in the past quite often is the 3rd member was handpicked by the other 2 and the chair and asked ahead of time, are you willing to do this?
The other one.
It has to be voted on. But the point is, you're priming the pump. You're not like rigging it because it still has to be elected.
Yeah.
Right.
So in other words, you don't want just a surprise out of left field coming at the meeting. You want to put
No,
your.
we understand, Jim. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's not the way it was done the
Oh, I
last
understand.
time.
Well,
Yeah.
it got out of hand.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking Kathy. I love her, but we had 3 meetings about how to do it, and then she just went off and did this bizarre thing. And I do
Right,
not
right.
they understand what the hell she was doing.
All right. So, okay. So this is a good plan. We'll
Okay.
do it that way. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So to recap, I should send out an email to all the council members and say, we're postponing. Here's the new schedule. for nominations.
Yes.
Okay,
It's all moving back a month, basically. We'll have the nominating committee formed on December 10th. They'll present the slate in January, and then does that mean the elections are in February or?
Yeah. Even if
Yeah.
it's a short
Yeah,
meeting.
I have council meeting. When's it the next council meeting?
Well, January 14th, that's the one where the election should have been held.
But then-
Right, so that's where we,
that.
yeah, that's where we elect the slate, the committee. But when's the council meeting after that for the full election?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There isn't one now, but April, because April 29th is the next one after that, but we can call a meeting anytime we want.
Mhm.
So do we move the April 29th one up to March?
Or even just, we could do it in February, just with a short meeting after, on Art Connections or something.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That makes more sense. And that's getting closer to kind of what we'd like to do anyway, because
Anyway, right.
why we have a 6-month lead up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
It also means, B, you gotta go through and confirm who wants to re-up for the next year, right?
Right,
Which is awkward since we don't have several positions filled. So what
Right.
are we doing about hours and tours and hours, whatever it's called?
Yeah, that's gonna be important, yeah.
That might be something that comes out of our December 3rd meeting. We should touch on that. What are we going to be tracking? How do we want to track it?
and
And
how we're gonna
Broadly
track it.
speaking, not-
Exactly.
we don't have to talk about technology. We can, just what,
Yeah, and that was an issue that came up in this symposium. As a way to advocate for ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
If we don't have good statistics to throw out, it puts the docent council in a much weaker position
Right.
in leveraging things with the museum.
Right.
Yeah.
And what positions are vacant besides that? Evelyn Goldman wants to be the parliamentarian.
oh,
Yeah, which is really great because Moni has not been happy about that.
And she's done it before, evidently. So, and she popped up with this. This was not solicited.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as I recall, didn't we propose getting rid of the parliamentarian?
we did.
Well, we
But-
because Jim, you're the parliamentarian.
Well, yeah, to an extent, yeah. I guess
No.
they want to have a docent in charge, but
I think
just a way of putting another friend on the board. And we were picking people who didn't even have the qualifications.
well, Evelyn does.
In the old days, it was an ex-chair who knows the way around everything, but that has fallen away. And
The only problem is I foresee if we propose to eliminate the parliamentarian, we'll get some opposition now because she wants to do it. So
then we could,
it's qualified. So, but anyway, it's up to you guys. I don't care.
we can
No, I
drop
think
that
you're right.
and just keep her. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, as long as she wants to do it, and then we phase it out.
Sure. But I don't know, what are the other openings? Hours and tours?
I know.
Hours and tours and virtual tours.
And what? Virtual tours,
Virtual tours.
which, man, I don't know who. So I have a question on that. Marina seems to be the keeper of all slides and all that. I mean,
Yeah,
do we need to keep that committee and just handle it the way it's being done, or?
Well, I don't see the need for the committee anymore. Yeah, it's
Because no one wants
winding
to.
it down and trying to not necessarily eliminate, but just keep only a small number. I think if you guys don't mind, I can handle approving new tours that are proposed by people. I don't see a point for having a committee anymore.
Yeah, and it's an ad hoc committee anyway,
yeah.
Just the point, let it expire at the end of the year.
right? Who's trying to get in?
Send them a message.
I don't know who iPhone is. Phyllis? No, whose iPhone? No, I don't know.
It just says iPhone. All right, I'll send a
I
message.
just sent him a
You
message.
did? Oh, good. Okay.
And I'll just remove them without reporting them to spam. Okay, or Zoom. Great.
So so I don't see the point in keeping it. We still haven't decided. We kind of have talked all along, ever since we started virtual tours, of keeping some presence on the internet with virtual tours for a long time. But on the other hand, the numbers signing up have really dropped drastically. That was a hard thing to predict. We never knew how it would go.
No.
So that's why I started doing it mostly just on Wednesdays, so it wouldn't conflict with the in museum tours when the museum's open.
Well, you know what? Maybe we could fold it into, I mean, outreach committee has not been filled.
Yeah.
And frankly, I could see it folding into that very well.
Yeah, I think a conversation around outreach, and now that virtual connections are becoming commonplace, this is a resource that we shouldn't just walk away from, especially since we've put all this work into it. I mean, we got the tours done. So,
and one of the things they brought up, I mean, and all this comes up with the symposium. One of the things they brought up is, go to a library in Sherman Heights and give a virtual, use.
Exactly. I mean, retirement communities, community centers.
So outreach, we got to fill and do a description, but I think that a lot as a partner to DEI is going to be huge.
Oh, it's got to be. It's got to be almost not separate.
Right.
Yeah. That we just say DEI and outreach. I don't know.
So for the time being, to sort of bring that process for managing virtual tours down to Jim managing that. So we still have it. We've still got the resources, and then as these other programs begin to evolve, we can evolve accordingly.
Right. That sounds good. That sounds really good.
Yeah, because I think most of the virtual tour that have been scheduled in the past month and looking forward to December have been either repeats of ones people have already done. You don't need a committee chair to do that. Or the new proposals are using existing slides, because we made all those banks.
Yeah.
There's a dozen banks. And so people are drawing from those to make new topics. And again, I can handle that easily. So I think we haven't had anything that would require a committee.
Yeah.
So I would endorse that.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So we'll add that to the agenda.
Cool.
Well, what, the outreach and the virtual tour?
Yeah, just take it off the.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't just die away. We should mention we are discontinuing.
Yeah. Right.
Or merging outreach.
So I'll put the status of the virtual tours.
Yeah.
And then to circle back, David alluded to discussions about new permanent schedule. Now, I've always understood our plan was eventually to go back to the standing permanent schedule that existed prior to COVID. But prior to instituting it, we're going to need to fill the gaps because so many people have retired and that sort of. Are we still thinking the same idea? In other words, not revising the whole thing and coming up with a whole new way of doing it? Or
No. I think
I agree.
really expecting to be able to get back to their own, sort of fill those first.
Okay, so we should talk at the
and then how are you going to handle the vacancies? Because like my class was the last one to actually, and we want to get better slots.
Right. Well, the way we had it traditionally, and if you approve, this is prior to COVID, because of the amount of work the officers do, we circulate the schedule.
But I'm not an officer, Jim, so.
Hang on. We circulate the schedule with the vacancies on it. They get the first crack of moving.
Right.
Then it goes to the board. They get the next crack. Then after the board, it goes to active docents. And then the trainee graduates of the current class get the last pickings, which is why they always end up on weekends. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. I'm just saying that's how we've always done it. So
Yeah, but that, just to be, you know, me. So here's the thing. But are we going to do it chronologically? So are we going to say, so the class of, when did I graduate? 20 or 19, whatever. Will they get the next crack after, and then the next, because, Marvin and Courtney shouldn't be able to.
Right. We don't want people leapfrogging ahead of.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the plan. Yeah. But then there was
on the board as an ad hoc chair then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There was another suggestion just prior to COVID of setting aside, I don't know how we would do it, setting aside some prime tour times on a lottery basis so that some of the newer folks would get a shot at a temporary exposure to those better times. Is that
my recollection of that was that we were going to add a couple of spaces in the 10 to 12 slot that were so popular with school groups, and that's sort of our busiest times for the recent graduates, so that they had the opportunity, if they wanted to sort of come in with the rest of us, that they would be kind of like an extra to the regular schedule. Some people might not want to do that.
Right.
And the other thing that might play into that is we had some discussion about, for refresher purposes, do we team people up?
right? Well, we have been doing that with the new interim
Yeah.
program where informally I've been telling all the new people who've never toured on in person, you need to pick someone to do your first couple of tours with. And they've been doing that. Yolanda did it. There's two more. Some people just haven't even put their toe in the water yet. And I'm getting a little impatient. Some of these timid folks who, I don't want to do it. So we need to kind of
Push them out into the pool.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that
Okay.
at the December meeting. But that's kind of what we need to do. The question is the timing. So when are we going to do, because it takes about 3 weeks to redo that schedule, because you need to leave, each of those groups have to have like 5 days to make their choices before you open it to the next group and then the next group. So
Oh my gosh.
it takes about 3 weeks or more. And the unknown factors are, when are we going to have full return to the museum? You remember at our last meeting, I mentioned there's at least 12 people who haven't done a damn thing in 18 months. I mean, they haven't done a single Zoom tour. They haven't done they're not signing up for in-person tours. So when are we going to return to that? And secondly, we don't know yet when schools are coming back to start wanting in-person tours. And see, we don't need 4 docents on every morning from 10 to 12.
Without school groups.
Without school groups. Yeah. And the only reason we might is if we've made the decision that you're not leaving this gallery. That we're
a gallery guide as opposed
that we're in the gallery. I'm not leaving contemporary. I'm not leading people through and exposing them.
So the 12 people who haven't done anything, well, is COVID an issue for any of them in going back to the museum?
I don't know, because we haven't asked. I'm a little leery about whether we are allowed to ask.
Well, maybe the thing we should do is, maybe you can't, Jim, but we could. If you can let us know who those 12 are, who really haven't signed, that you're aware of, haven't signed up, then maybe, maybe the officers, members of the executive committee, Mary included, sort of divide and conquer those and have conversations with them casually.
And in looking at the list, I see now 2 people have stepped up who hadn't for anything else. Hari and Leanne. They just requested tours.
Okay.
In days for the December schedule.
Yeah.
So that takes 2 off of my list. Does anyone know how Ann Rast is doing? Has she recovered from her broken pelvis?
No,
I
but
think-
that's a biggie. Yeah, no.
I think she has.
Because I haven't heard a peep from her. I haven't seen her at any meetings or anything anywhere at all. But I
She
think
does get her pedicures once a month. I'm friends with her manicurist.
do they have those tanks of fish that eat your dead skin off your feet?
Oh, stop it.
No.
Stop it.
I've seen that. It gives me the creeps. But anyway,
Totally.
but no, I'm just saying I haven't heard a peep. So someone either needs to approach her and say, "Hey, Anne, are you ready to get back involved, or what?" 'Cause
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think-
we're thinking about the XCOM taking, what do you say now? You've got 10?
Yeah, let's go through the list and we can see who.
Yeah.
Who is?
But now, or you want me to email it to you?
Oh, you could give it to us now. Then
Okay.
there's no record.
The ones who, as far as I know, have never done either a Zoom tour or a virtual tour. Debbie Callahan.
Deb? Uh-huh.
Debbie has done passing tours. She's been a passer, but that's kind of a small change when you're looking
Yeah.
at the tours we've been doing. Lane Campbell, absolutely nothing. Zilch, zero.
Okay.
Terry Holt has been active as librarian, but she's done no tours.
Oh, Terry. Okay.
Anita Lindberg, absolutely nothing. Ann Mintour, sorry, Ann Mintour has never done a tour of any kind, but she's been very active with her committee job as
Oh, yeah.
education.
That doesn't count, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. For this purpose, it doesn't
Yeah,
count.
it doesn't count.
Okay.
Debbie,
Well, I can talk to Anne. I mean, that's no biggie.
so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5. And then Ann is a question mark because she had her health issue. Terry Reed has done Zippo. She did one
Oh,
tour. She
Who is
signed up for a passing tour and then forgot to attend it. So we were screwed. So she's number 6. Renata
What's her name? What's her name?
Sherry Reed. Here come the judge.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, Sherry. Yes, Sherry.
Sherry was a judge and now she's.
Yeah, she was my partner, actually. She and I did our tours together. So, I mean,
Renato has done absolutely no tours of any kind. I don't think he did a Zoom. I could be wrong.
he did.
he did.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah.
Then he's not signed up for any person.
Yeah.
And Ken Williams has done neither a virtual nor and that's just my superficial look. I need to look more carefully. But so those are folks we need to consider. How are we going to get them back involved?
So that's 9 people.
They all renewed their membership. So it means they're not like losing interest in being a docent. It's just like,
Right.
when are you going to step up?
Well,
Right.
we could also just send him a letter and say,
Yeah.
what's your status?
Yep. And then the thing is,
David,
some people may have
you're
health.
on mute, David.
Sorry about that. Just to call one of us, call them up and say, hey, what's the story? What are your thoughts? Before we send them a letter. A letter is kind of impersonal, and they're going to go,
Oh,
wow,
sorry. Okay.
what is the IRS? I'm sending you.
Yeah, all right.
And I would like it to come from one of you because to me, it makes it more formal if I do it. And then it's like,
Right.
Thing is,
Yeah.
it has to be delicate and diplomatic because if someone has a health concern about getting back in the museum for live tours, we have to respect that for now. I don't know when that will ever go away, if it ever does, but
We're not looking to call the ranks, but
Exactly.
we just need to know what's going on.
Well,
Yeah.
and I would just point out on the executive committee, the only person who would know some of these folks really is Michelle, because Gina and Marvin are so new. I mean,
Yeah.
they might know Renato, but
And I don't think Renato's got to be planning to go back to in-person touring.
oh yeah.
And he's
loves
done.
it.
He loves it. He loves it.
All right.
So you're dividing this up already because I'll take Anne.
Okay.
And then, quite honestly, I haven't done a tour. I haven't signed up.
You don't have to. You're the president.
Yeah,
Right.
but it would be nice to get back. With the flood and everything, I don't know from day to day.
Yeah.
Right, but that's not relevant to this list because you're excused.
And-
I
So it
Am I
makes
on
the
the-
conversation a little easier for you, right? Because you can say, look, I haven't done this either. What are your plans? What are your
see
thoughts?
that.
Right?
Right.
Okay, I'll
But I
take
would just
Anne
point,
Rass.
I would just point out, if you're feeling bad, B, it specifically says in the policies and procedures that the docent chair is exempt from touring.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, in recent years, they've all done tours voluntarily. But I'm just saying you aren't obliged to, because the policies recognize that you have such a big job and you have so much to do. So
Okay, well, I'll take 3. I'll take Anne Rast,
Okay.
Debbie Callahan, and Sherry Reed.
Okay.
So, could I suggest something, B? Because I don't know everybody. I do not know these folks I know Ann Mintier, Sherry, and Ann Rast.
Oh.
And Renato. So maybe I could do Sherry and Ann Mintier.
Sure.
And maybe you could, you're going to see Lane.
I just thought of that. Let me do Lane.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that we all know about Lane. She never returns phone calls and she never returns, but I know that I really don't know. So I'll take, okay, starting over, Rast, Callahan, and Campbell.
Okay.
And you're taking,
I can
Terry,
do Ann Mintier and Sherry Reed.
okay. And I'll take Terry, Anita, and Ken.
And who wants Renato? I can do Renato.
Actually, I'm going to see Renato soon anyway, so I'll talk to him then.
Okay, great. All right. So we're done.
okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah, because I'm going to
Wait
have to
a
start
minute.
pushing. We've got a good initial turnout for this December schedule I just sent out, but there's still a lot of gaps, so I'm going to have to do a second
Okay.
push on that. The one thing we don't want to have is like days where we just don't have any tours at all. I think that would look,
Yeah. I haven't signed up yet, so I know I need the extra tickler to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do want to sign up because I miss it terribly.
Yeah.
And I miss my free Tuesdays.
Well, and Jim, someday when we have time, I'll tell you about my day with the SDSU professor.
Oh, no. You must tell all.
Yikes. Okay.
Oh dear.
What happened?
Oh no, we don't have time now, but he kept changing things. So, and like the last thing we did is he took the entire group over to the ICA across the park there. And, and I was like, bye. And he's like, aren't you coming? So,
Oh, no, you're kidding.
God, it was a fun day, but it was a scramble. So it was fun. But a lot of people, I'll tell you what, it was like 40, I would say, kids. It's 40.
Over the course of the day.
Yeah.
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 And I'll tell you that the museums that were open on the East Coast in Boston and New York City were filled. You had to stand in line, sometimes in the rain, from the entrance all the way around the block.
Wow.
Because you had to you had to show your ID and your COVID vaccination. Took forever.
Well, that's my experience with the Guggenheim every single time I've been. But yeah. Okay.
Just chock-a-block with people so excited. Okay. So
I think we got
I
a
will
plan.
work with Gina to get together an agenda for the 3rd. And that's just us, right? XCOM. Okay.
All right.
Righty.
Thanks, everybody.
Very good
Bye-bye.
day. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
You too.
Great
Bye-bye.
weekend. Good to see you all. And congratulations, Mary and Jim and
Yay.
David
Yay.
on
Yeah.
the Fortuny. I'm
Oh,
fascinated by
Jim
his
and
things.
David on this one. I did not. Thank you.
This one's great.
Yeah.
Bye.
It was great.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.